What's up, guys? I'm Joe. Today I'm talking about the new Trivium album, The Sin and the Sentence. So Trivium is back with their 8th studio album, The Sin and the Sentence. To me, they're a band that, wasn't quite sure of their sound for a long time. I feel like they spent a lot of time dabbling in different areas of metal, ultimately searching for what is, the signature Trivium sound. They started off with some more like thrash metal tendencies. Their third record, The Crusade, really dived into their, 80s metal influences, a lot of Slayer influences going on there, Maiden, Metallica, that kind of stuff. Not a big hit amongst fans, but I like that one for its kind of, ode to 80s metal. The album Shogun really started to put them on the map. It added some more progressive type elements to the band. And, ultimately, In Waves finally came out. And I feel like that's the album where they really kind of found their sound a bit. It had those heavy metal tendencies. It had influence of their favorite bands, obviously, as far as Metallica, Slayer, that kind of stuff goes. But, at the same time, it started to introduce a more modern element to their sound, diving into those metalcore kind of areas. Lots of breakdowns, heavy riffs, screaming vocals, stuff like that, which had been around for them, but this is where they really honed it in to a more modern sound. And I think In Waves, for me, was like the pinnacle of the band. In my mind, they've been on a bit of a downslide since then, with the 2 records that followed. You had Vengeance Falls, which, kind of famously now is known as the album where David Draymond of Disturbed came in. And while I'd say I'm a pretty big Disturbed fan, he really took over Trivium in this record, it sounded like. It just sounded like them trying to be Disturbed. And then, Silence in the Snow, the last record, ditched the screaming vocals, focused way more on melody. But, in my mind, again, those 2 records just seemed very forced to me. I feel like they were really trying to push that modern element of In Waves that, worked so well, I think, because it was more of a mix of their influence and their previous sound with these more modern tendencies. And ultimately, what you have with The Sin and the Sentence, the new record, is another great mixing and combination of, their metal roots as far as heavy metal, thrash metal, stuff like that, mixed with their more modern sound that you saw in Waves and to an extent on Vengeance Falls and Silence in the Snow. What you have here is just a great culmination of what the band has done in their entire career. You have some fantastic metal moments on here. There's heavy and fast moments, going back to their thrash days. There's some progressive elements going back to, Shogun. There are a lot of 80s influences on here, and you hear that as far as the dueling guitars and things like that go. Ultimately, they just have a really great balance because, while these songs can be extremely heavy, with fast, riffs and dueling guitars and heavy breakdowns and screaming vocals, there's a lot of great melody on here, and it just doesn't sound forced to me. It sounds very natural. It's on display on a song like Betrayer, one of my absolute favorites on here. You're just hit with pummeling riffs and drums. By the way, the drumming on this album is very phenomenal. And, while this song is very heavy and, very metal-infused, it's got a very melodic chorus to it, very hooky, very catchy, but it just doesn't sound like, we're going for a radio kind of catchy. It's more so like they went for a very big, epic melody, a big sing-along type chorus, more in the vein of a band like Iron Maiden. It reminds me a lot of them, actually, as far as, the dueling guitar underneath. The way the guitar line really accents that melody and just builds to the overall feel of the chorus. Sever the Hand is another one where you're really getting the best of both worlds of just, great epic metal moments, but also, a very good sing-along chorus to it, but again, not in a radio kind of way. For a comparison of what I mean by that, think of a band like Five Finger Death Punch, which, they'll come out with these big, heavy riffs and screaming vocals, and then the chorus will switch to this, cheesy, made-for-radio type thing. That's not what's going on this album. And what's cool about Sever the Hand, while it kind of starts off in a more groove-oriented place, it just moves on into this incredibly thrashy moment in the middle there, which leads on to some more progressive elements, dueling guitars, soaring solos, stuff like that. Just a lot of great instrumentals going on here. I was reading an interview of the band where they were saying they really, wanted to make an album that them as metal fans would love to listen to. And, that definitely shows here. They're just going all out on these songs. Kind of just like a balls-to-the-wall approach, which is what I love about metal. I love when metal is, somewhat overindulgent, I guess. And obviously just not too worried about, the, popular or radio element of it. I feel like the closest you get to that on this album is Other Worlds and The Heart from Your Hate. Those songs kind of slow things down. They don't quite work for me. I think they're probably good to have on here as far as just providing a little bit of a slowdown for, what is mostly just big metal songs. But they don't quite work for me. I felt like they both had this element of where they were just slowing down too much. The kind of minimalist approach to the drums and some of the verses on both of them, as far as like the very, open chord sounding guitars, just really makes everything feel like it's very sluggish. I felt like both of the songs could have had that kind of ballad approach, without losing some of the punch. The Wretchedness Inside is an interesting one. It's got almost kind of a dancey type beat to it, but that doesn't take away from the heaviness of the track whatsoever. There's a lot of big, meaty riffs on here, a lot of screaming vocals, a nice little breakdown thing towards the middle there. Overall, just a pretty cool song, something different in the course of the album, but that also doesn't lose the steam of the album. Beauty and the Sorrow is another song that, maybe kind of gets into the sort of ballad territory. Not that it's a slow song by any means, but this one packs more of a punch. There's more of a heaviness and more of an attack to it, I felt. As far as like the lyrical type content goes, you see it on this song, you see it on a song like Betrayer. There's a sort of melodrama to it that I think overall kind of works here. Nothing really comes off too cheesy or anything like that for me. The Ravancus is another huge standout on this album. It takes more of a political turn as far as the lyrics go, but just a big epic track. I think it's about 7 minutes in length, and I just love like the different movements it goes through. There's a lot of changing things up throughout the song. You start with a sort of heavy shuffle type feel before things ultimately get faster and heavier. Again, a lot more dueling guitars, soaring solos on here, which is another thing I liked about the title track, The Sin in the Sentence. It gets this album off to a fantastic start. That thrash metal edge comes in very strong, but with these very melodic, soaring guitar lines over it. I love this, that the song builds and gets faster as the verse is going on before hitting you with this very heavy, very driven, slowed down chorus. You get that kind of groove-oriented feel with Beyond Oblivion as well. A big standout for me on this track is that chanted kind of vocal line. Just really pumps you up. Gets a lot of energy going on in that track. So yeah, overall I'm pretty impressed with this album. It just offers a nice culmination of everything Trivium's done throughout their career. I think, it offers, much like In Waves, a very defined sound for the band. I think they're at their best when they let their influence shine, but they add their own kind of modern twist to it. So yeah, I'm going to give it a strong 4 out of 5. Definitely a great album overall. So let me know what you think of the record, favorite songs, whether you liked it, didn't like it. As always, don't forget to subscribe and check out plenty of other reviews, vinyl videos, stuff like that. And yeah, thanks guys. I'll see you next time.